What is up, y'all? Paige Kuhn and Adam Kramer here from the No Punts Allowed podcast, and welcome to the College Football Ranking Show presented by Modelo. Full-time fans like you deserve a Modelo. Please drink responsibly. Week 12 of college football delivered. We had an upset that will shake the top five. Alabama falls to Oklahoma. Georgia beats Texas. Texas A&M survived a close call. USC got a huge win. There's a lot going on. Adam, what do you think from this weekend is going to have the biggest impact on these rankings this week?
It has to be Alabama losing, right? And I have to apologize to Oklahoma fans first and foremost, because I think when we first did this show, they were out of the mix. The gauntlet, you and I have talked about the gauntlet for
Yes.
Oklahoma trying to make it through. There's still work to be done, but they've done an exceptional job, Paige. And so when you look at that result, that changes things, right? Top four, we're talking about buys, we're talking about home field advantage, and for Oklahoma, we're just talking about survival, getting into the
Yeah.
bracket. So there were some close calls, like you mentioned, Texas A&M. As close as that was, it really is not going to change anything. This changes a lot. If you're on the bubble, which I guess Alabama is now, things look a little bit
Mm.
different. In Oklahoma, at least for the time being, Page squarely off the bubble, squarely in the mix. And I'm really curious to see where the committee puts the Sooners, right? How much we've talked about good losses getting a lot
Yeah.
of love from the committee. What's a good win going to do for them this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to feel good for Oklahoma because they've basically been dismissed by the committee in a lot of ways. Because much like us, they've been anticipating this gauntlet and these, wins that there are these games that they could potentially lose and, not have these signature wins. But it is just interesting to see what the committee is going to do this week because I think this is probably one of the more challenging weeks for them because you've got teams with an extra loss that maybe are going to jump ahead of teams that, have the head-to-head before that they were staying in front of. There is a lot. How high do you think Oklahoma could be this
I,
week?
I think because they were right squarely on the bubble, right? So you're going to jump at
Yes.
least a couple of spots. However, to your point, now we start to play the game of like what's most important to the committee because you have a resume pretty much established, right? Except if you're a team like USC trying to boost that resume this week or a Michigan waiting till that last game. We kind of know. So it's not like you're going to be shooting up the rankings. Let's be honest though, recency bias matters. Paige, when you
Yeah.
lose, when you win, it's going to impact these rankings. So I think they're going to go up. It is a great question. How far do they go up? And then, Texas, how far do they go down? These two teams have kind of been coupled together a little bit here
Yes.
the last couple of weeks. Texas, of course, that is another meaningful outcome, not just for Texas, we believe, maybe is kind of out of the conversation. We were talking pre-show. Maybe you're not ready to go there just yet. And of course, Georgia, they're going to slide up naturally, but again, they're going to run into a wall here in the form of the teams that are still unbeaten.
Yep, and absolutely, we will get you those rankings as soon as they start to come out. But there also is a conversation in the Big Ten around maybe some quote bubble teams, Oregon, USC, where they are at. I know they obviously have a big one coming up this week, but do you see any movement in that middle area at all? In that, I guess, middle to top area?
Well, the other team, Notre Dame, right? They're not Big Ten, but I'm in Big Ten land. They're close enough,
Yes.
right? So in that middle, that's the one that's stood out. And you and I talked last week about, what happens when they beat Pitt, considering it's what Syracuse and Stanford, okay? They're massive favorites from this point forward. They didn't just
Yeah.
pass the test, they aced the test. So not only are they running out of games because there's no conference championship game, I'm sure people are going to have thoughts about that. It is what it is. They look good, and they've looked really good since those early losses. So Notre Dame in that, kind of that middle area, I think is going to do really, really well. And then it comes down to, BYU and Vanderbilt and Utah.
Oh,
Miami. Is Miami back in this thing? Of course, Miami would have loved a Notre Dame loss. A lot of teams would have loved a Notre Dame loss and didn't get it. So I think the bubble becomes a little less pronounced. And while we're talking about a lot of teams this week that frankly don't have meaningful matchups, I'm going to be completely honest. You and I were talking pre-show. If you look at the SEC schedule this week, it is cupcake week. We're used to it. There are some teams that play really good games. We'll talk about those too. And then you have rivalry week. You've got Georgia, Georgia Tech, and you've got others, but you're running out of chances to make an impression. And that, I think, for some of these middle teams hoping for help or the teams below them that have an opportunity to make that big impression, that's going to be the interesting one. I think it's going to skew this one way or another.
yeah, we have who is the real best team in the country. Georgia getting some love in this conversation after
No doubt.
their win. this week, which is a big deal. But a team in the SEC that maybe has a little less to worry about and is probably in the college football playoff, but is maybe worried about losing their head coach, and that is Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin rumored to have toured LSU, but not that he hasn't been there before, but see Baton Rouge with his family. He has said there's no ultimatum that Ole Miss has given him. The report was that there was an ultimatum given that he needed to make a decision as of the Egg Bowl. I said this to you pre-show. I really don't know that Lane Kiffin actually leaves. And the only job he should leave for is LSU. Sorry, Florida fans. I'm so sorry. I don't know if you're watching because obviously you're not in the college football
Why
playoff, but
not?
that's okay. But you should be watching because this is a great show. But I would just say for Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin, it has to be weird, but I kind of feel like he's been as transparent as you can possibly be in this stage because again, LSU does need to know that this is going to happen. They can't wait. You've got early National Signing Day that is championship week. You've got the transfer portal that opens during the college football playoffs. So I think there needs to be something established or like a handshake agreement or something. But it's still weird that he would be coaching in the college football playoff if he was maybe to leave.
And they probably wouldn't let him. By the way, not his first rodeo in that department when you go back
Yeah.
to Alabama. Okay, so he's got some
Yes.
history here when he was the offensive coordinator and Nick Saban said enough is enough. Things are different now. Lane has all the leverage in the world. We don't know what he's thinking. We know that the interest is there, that there's obviously mutual interest. It doesn't mean he's going to leave, but this is an unusual one, Paige, because they're a legit college football playoff team contender. They've got to win in the Egg Bowl. There's SEC championship scenarios as well. And yet the LSU job is there. And because of college football's unique, I can't even say off-season schedule. What do we even call this, right? But because of these marks on the
Yes.
calendar that a team like LSU has to be prepared for, and Ole Miss for that matter, this kind of hangs in the balance. Look, they didn't play a great game last week either. You do wonder, is this a distraction? The fact that they're not playing this week for Ole Miss is probably a really good thing to try and sort this thing out. Do I think there's an ultimatum? I don't know if I'd use that word, but there's probably some discussion saying, like, "Hey,
Yes.
man, come on,
We need to know.
we got to know," and it's probably right. There has to be some element to this. I do not envy. It's a great position to be in that Lane is in, but it's still not an easy decision to make, given the other schools and the offers probably on the table.
So I want to talk about something in the chat that you know what we agree with. And it's basically the conversation around Utah because basically they've been annihilating teams. And of course, their narrow loss to BYU, and then of course the Texas Tech loss. But I think people are frustrated with where that Utah team is sitting. And I think you could also argue you could be upset where BYU is sitting. Do you think the committee still has, the answer for me is yes, some bias, even though we're supposed to be using these strength of record measurements. And it just appears that we may only be using them for teams that don't have a brand or logo they want to make the college football playoff.
Well, if BYU wasn't getting respect, then Utah's certainly not going to get
Yeah,
respect,
exactly.
right? No, but that they're still in the mix. So yes, I think they're very capable. They've kind of had their own version of a Penn State type year, right? Where they've lost the games maybe they should lose, but
Yes. Wow.
still
That is
right
such a good comparison. Like
now.
four team playoff
Yeah,
Penn
like
State. Yes.
14 playoff Penn State, where like they lost games, but they should have lost. So I'm curious where they are now. Now, shout out to Arizona State. By the
Yes.
way, number 25, Arizona State. You lose your quarterback. You've had injuries. I know this isn't what you wanted, but I love that they're there. And there's Tulane. We got a group of five
Yes.
spot, right, Paige? So you've got
Yes.
Tulane, Houston, not a team that we expected to be in this position. What a coaching job there. Yeah, this is already
So
already very interesting. Wow, these teams are coming in hot here.
hot.
Yeah.
Yes. Missouri. Oh, Missouri at 22. We're
Yeah,
just,
hey, they got a chance this week
they do.
to put a
There's
wrench into things for sure. And I can't wait to
yes.
talk about that game because I have thoughts, especially if their quarterback is coming back.
Illinois getting some respect. So
Now
actually, let me
yeah,
say
yeah, wait,
if you
that can't be. There we go. There's Texas. I was gonna say. Um there's an
wow.
A&M now and there. I was like, wow, the committee has lost its mind.
So
Uh
we will talk about that. I do want to talk about Tennessee for a sec
yeah,
because their losses are to, we will see what the rankings are, but their losses are to basically top 10, top 12 teams. And they're really not getting the same respect that like a Texas was. Although Texas falling out, this now means the committee to me does not view them as a team that could potentially get in. I know we said, oh, they're done, 3 loss, so you wouldn't get in, but I think there was a little bit of concern that the committee still respected their like quality loss to the number one team in the country and things like that and playing in the SEC. But I don't know if you beat Texas A&M, then maybe we have a conversation about it. But that is interesting. But if you're Tennessee, I think you're a little annoyed that the committee was respecting Texas so much over you because of your quality losses. They were looking at Texas's quality losses.
I will say the other thing that stands out is the ACC. I will, when someone figures out the ACC, please let me know. There you
Virginia's
go.
in there,
Speaking
okay.
of Miami, right there. Miami now just approaching playoff consideration, right? We didn't we weren't sure if they'd be back into the mix, but look at them, like right back there. But Georgia Tech, obviously, just another miracle. Was that a miracle? Would we quantify it as that with Boston College? Virginia in the
Yeah.
mix there. Miami not out of this yet. And as much as Miami has driven me crazy, Paige, I would say if they got into the playoff, I don't think other playoff teams having to play in Miami, I don't think they would like that. And I've been very critical of Miami, of Cristobal and everything else. There is still a lot of talent on that roster.
If they get in, it'll be like in March Madness when you see like a 7 seed that
Yeah.
really is like a 5 seed, and you're like, this is like not a this isn't cool. Yeah, there's a lot of situations where I think Miami would be in that boat because again, they as of right now, I believe they're going to be the highest ranked ACC team.
Wow.
Um,
So there's your Big
so
12 teams right there too.
okay.
So Utah, BYU, and
So
the head to
Utah is
head,
going to be left out
yes,
because
because
obviously Miami's going to get in.
yes, and then Tulane, of course, in that position as well. So BYU at 11. Now it's interesting, right? Now we start to see, and there it
Yep.
is. Alabama drops from 4 to 10. So that's about where you would expect Alabama to go. I don't think the committee would have put them any lower than that. You could make a case. Maybe BYU should be above it. Although I don't know. Alabama's strength of schedule is so tough. This feels appropriate for them. Do you agree? Like, is this right where Alabama should probably be?
Yes, I think it's fair. Like I understand that, you don't want them to lose, but you gotta give them the
Or
credit for the fact that this is we talked about Oklahoma's gauntlet and we're giving them the credit, and gonna make excuses for their losses. I think we have to kind of do the same for Alabama, which is gonna upset a lot of fans, but
43rd
Notre
and
Dame,
43rd in
Notre Dame,
scoring offense for Alabama, by the way. Yikes. That is a theme. Well,
Notre Dame.
so there you go. Number 8 in scoring offense, Notre Dame. Like this is done. Like I've seen weird stuff
It's a
happen.
done, yeah.
I know they lost to Northern Illinois last year, right? I saw it with my eyes. I don't care. Notre Dame is in the playoff. And then the question is, are they hosting a game? Right? Like that really gonna be, are they playing a game on campus? But Notre Dame is in, and they look really good. Jeremiah Love looked great. The wideouts were making plays. And there's Oklahoma. So they do jump a couple of spots and now move into the top 8. What a season for Brent Venables, given their
Yeah.
schedule. And they've got some work still to do, right? But I don't think the gauntlet is as hard as it once was when you look at how Missouri has played of late. And then obviously, I believe LSU. So just a tremendous year where they lost their starting quarterback for a good chunk of the time. The
Yeah.
defense has been really good. I mean, that was a big time win.
So, do you think Oklahoma is not just like, okay, yes, they're obviously in this circumstance, but do you think that they maybe we have not been giving them enough credit despite like you just said they do have some things they have to work out, but would you consider them a threat? Would that be a team that you're like, you know what, I don't want them on in my bracket and where I have to play.
I think defensively they're a unique challenge, right?
Yeah.
Because defensively, Ohio State, Indiana, Oklahoma, right in that conversation. And
Mhm.
by the way, Oregon here can change, I think, their resume output and what it looks like this week against USC, right? We talk about Ole Miss not having a game this week. If you want to highlight a potential jump for next week's rankings, I think it's right here. Oregon with a win over USC, they're a 10-point favorite. I think you could definitely see a jump there, Paige, for sure. Again,
Yeah.
recency bias. You look at Ole Miss's resume, pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Love seeing them as a top 30 defense. By the way, this was not the Lane Kiffin norm. It's become the norm.
Yeah, I definitely think there is going to be some respect for Oregon down the stretch. I think we saw in the first rankings where they were ranked, and we were like, hey, maybe the committee is being a little critical of them. That Penn State win obviously doesn't mean as much, but again, you have the two top teams in the country playing in the same conference. And so that is a little bit of a frustrating situation for Oregon to be kind of felt like they were the one that got, criticized. But at the end of the year, you have the room to prove it. So
Texas Tech at 5, top 5 scoring offense, top 5 scoring defense. This team is legit, right? They are legit. They are for real when they're healthy. They're a really, really tough out, and they've gotten a ton of respect from AP poll voters and now committee voters.
let's talk about so Georgia obviously at 4.
Yep.
Congratulations, Georgia. Sorry, I was almost going to skip over them and go to Texas A&M. But if you're, I mean, yes, okay, undefeated, yeah, keep them. But Texas A&M looked a little beatable and then looked insane and
Yeah.
almost unbeatable. So very much flipped there. But certainly think that Texas A&M has, a tough road a little bit ahead. I think there's room for mistake and I think Georgia, could wait it out. You could end up in that grouping.
Texas A&M has won every game and deserves credit for it. However, it's not
Yeah.
always been easy against inferior competition, right? Like the
Yeah.
Arkansas game, but they found a way. And like the way they found a way, that game was incredible and
Against South Carolina, yeah.
deserve a lot of credit for that. Um,
So I do want to mention something about Tulane specifically here. I think the winner of the American is just who's going to get in. So I
yes.
think that championship game is really going to matter because there's a lot of teams that have like played each other and have wins and losses, but there's a head-to-head with another team where that team beat the other team. It's a very chaotic conference. We talk about the ACC. The American is a little crazy as well. And so Tulane getting the nod right now, but I think regardless, we're seeing that the American is going to get that credit. I know James Madison, a team that people wanted to talk
Yep.
about. I
North
think their strength
Texas.
of record, yeah, I think their strength of record is just really not doing it for the committee. They have, an impressive resume in terms of what a quality loss, but I think the winner of the American is really going to be the team that gets into this based off of the last few weeks.
All right. I know we've been doing this bracket for a couple of weeks now. I just want to
Yes.
say that to date, and I think I've said this every week, so I'll probably say it again next week, but to date, this is by far my favorite bracket.
Okay.
I don't know how you feel. This one just feels right. And like we do the March Madness, it's like you look at those areas of, oh wow, look at that bottom part. Alabama, Oregon, and then the winner places Indiana. Like that is fire here. Um,
Yes.
Notre Dame,
So
Oklahoma, a lot of defense being played there, followed then by a game that would also feature probably a lot of defense.
all right. Well, let's go through and maybe rank some of these games as to which one we like the best and would be most intriguing in terms of the first round, and then also let's pick winners of these first round games. I think you and I will be on the same page in the 5-12 game, and that will be Texas Tech at home. We'll definitely get a win over Tulane and then go play Georgia. That will be an excellent football game,
Oh,
by the way.
yeah, no, we have not been able to make a case for a 12 seed to date in any of these brackets. We're not going to be doing it here. So I'm with you there.
And then we've got Notre Dame, Oklahoma. That Notre Dame or that Oklahoma defense could cause problems.
This would be a tough one. This is probably like a pick 'em game too, in the eyes of the
Yeah.
committee. Potential national championship recap. I would probably pick Oklahoma here right now.
So would
I
I.
would probably pick
Wow, look at us
Oklahoma.
agreeing.
And this is me apologizing to all the Oklahoma fans that I've angered over the last few weeks, saying this is too much. It's not. They've proven themselves.
So we've got Miami at Ole Miss.
Will Lane
Like,
Kiffin
okay,
be coaching? Right? Like that.
so
Will Lane or no Lane is the question here.
I mean, but also this is exactly what I was talking about in terms of like the like college basketball bracket. Like they're the 11 seed. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like that is just like wild. I mean, Ole Miss would be pissed. Finally, Lane makes it to the college football playoff and they have to play Miami. Who
I
do you
like
take?
I like Ole Miss though. I do. I think Miami is a problem. I think this Ole Miss team has proven itself as well. So, but I don't feel great about it. And the lane, admittedly, the lane stuff is hovering over the college
Yes.
football playoff when you look at it in this way, in a major way. We got to sort out the lane thing before we really have an opinion on this.
It would be pretty ugly. I think he should stay. That's my opinion. All right. Who's winning this matchup? Notre Dame versus Oklahoma. The chat agrees with us that Oklahoma would win that. I think it's just because everybody loves to hate on Notre Dame. We've learned this every
Yeah,
year.
every
And
week, every
unfortunately, guys,
year.
they are going to be in this bracket, so get used to it. So we did Miami, Ole Miss, and then we've got Alabama at Oregon.
Ole Miss getting some love. Yeah,
Ole Miss,
Alabama.
yeah, they are.
I've got worries. I've got worries about the Alabama offense, but I still think I would take Alabama in this game. I really do. This is a tough one. Both teams,
So
we still have a lot to figure out, which is weird to say because we're 3.5 months into the season.
I would take Oregon if they are like fully healthy and they have Decoring Moore back.
Yes.
And I think a fully healthy Oregon, I think could beat Alabama at home. That environment is getting a lot of love now that they're in the Big Ten. It was already a big deal in the Pac-12. Wow, the SEC bias. Come on, chat. What are we doing?
Hey, no, it's just smart people making smart decisions here.
Sure, 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 sure. I
No,
hope we get it.
it's a tough game. It is a tough game, SEC bias or not. It's an Oregon team that almost lost to Iowa, almost lost to a Penn State team that's looking for a coach. Very talented. The quarterback's really good. Injuries are a good point, by the way. They need to get
Yeah.
healthy, otherwise it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I do want to mention in the chat, someone was like, "Where did Tulane come from?" It's honestly such chaos in their conference that that's why this is looking the way it is.
Yeah,
I
they
feel
are.
very confused by this as well. I kind of thought maybe Navy
Well, the,
would it.
it was a
I
complete because we do a top 25 every week. And I could tell you when
yeah.
I got to 18 or 19 this week, it was like, all right, we're going to start over here and fill in all these from scratch. I think the committee had to do that as well for the time being. This is the one. South Florida, we've seen a lot of group of five
Well,
change here the last 3 weeks. Memphis
yeah.
had its moment, right? So we're moving things around.
Yeah, so Navy beat South Florida. And so I thought they would move in because Tulane's I'm very confused by this. And then you've got obviously North Texas is part of it. That the standings, I think technically right now, Navy is in terms of standings at the top. So yeah, it is just a very confusing situation in terms of group of five, but we will get whoever wins the American. So
It's an important reminder, by the way, that the conference championship games will completely reshape this playoff, not just in the group of five, which is kind of easy to your point. I think you'll know who wins that conference, who is in. In the ACC, and even in the Big 12, who knows, right? This is where you start to steal at large bids. It starts to feel a little bit like college basketball, where you get that,
yeah.
that team, that 500 team that finds a
Yes.
way to steal a bid. You could have some similar outcomes here, I think, albeit on a much smaller scale.
Yeah, Nate, that's so crazy. All right. Well, this is going to be interesting. All right, let's talk teams that are out of the bracket as of right now. So you obviously have BYU and Utah being the two big ones. Do you think there's going to be enough chaos maybe above them in either the SEC or the Big Ten to get one of those teams in?
Well, when you look at who could fall, I mean, Alabama still has a game against Auburn. We know what happens in that game, right? It just feels weird that BYU is not in this. But the teams, for me, Paige, that are really interesting, two teams, USC and Michigan. Now both have to win a game that they're USC this week is a big underdog. Michigan
Yeah.
still plays Ohio State. They've won that game a lot lately, by the way. I don't know if you know this. They'll tell you if you don't know it. So if they win those games, though, doesn't that shake up everything? Like they're
Yeah.
that meaningful. Now, USC, Oregon, maybe not as meaningful as Michigan going and beating Ohio State. By the way, Michigan almost just lost to Northwestern on a baseball field. Looked like a fun game to be at. Beautiful weather on Saturday.
That
But
was insane.
those are like two of the biggest games we have left. So if
Yeah.
I'm looking down the rankings a bit, like how could it get really weird? I look at those two teams.
Well, and the other part of this is so say USC beats Oregon, okay? And then you have Michigan upset Ohio State. Does that head to head matter? And is the committee willing to do it because you beat the number one team in the country in the last week of the season?
And then also, by the way, whoever's not playing in their conference championship game, right? Where are you going to be
Yeah.
penalized for losing your conference champ? Or maybe you win it. This is where with these super conferences, the size of
Hmm.
these, and you don't have divisions, it gets messy. It gets
Yeah.
really, really messy. And like a team like Notre Dame, it might behoove you to be sitting out. on conference
Yeah,
championship weekend. If
abs
you're in the SEC,
absolutely.
you're like, we're happy with our resume here. We're not
If
going to do any more.
you're Oregon, like I mentioned before, you're happy with sitting
Yeah,
out and getting healthy. But I will say the other part of this is BYU, if they do in fact make it to the Big 12 championship game, which I think they will, and beat Texas Tech, then that's the Big 12's pretty much
there's
best
two,
chance to get two teams in.
and they
That
would.
will mess up a lot of stuff for I feel like those bubble teams in the Big 10 and the SEC for sure
Texas
because they're
Tech would
right
not.
Vanderbilt
Yeah, they
another.
wouldn't drop out, right? Like
No,
two.
there's no, I mean, you could not punish. Well, that's the thing is the committee has now been in this to say like, hey, we're not going to punish
I,
people for playing in their conference championship game. And you can't do it because, I mean, it would be absurd to leave Texas Tech out. They're a good football team, so they should be in.
I will say, since we've started doing the playoff, whether it was four teams or this one, we've not had like a bloodbath yet for conference championship weekend. For a lot of
Yeah.
times, it's gone as chalk. I would
Mhm.
love for that not to be the case because all the conversations we have could really change in an instant once you're just, okay, that team has to be in.
Yeah.
For a Big 12, that's a great example. That's how you steal a bid and really, really mess things up.
Yeah. Well, it's the most deserving versus best teams. And we know that that always is, we want that to be the conversation, but it never ends up being that conversation when it comes to it. But now it is time for our segment called Fan Favorite presented by Modelo, where we will each give a top contender and a sleeper for the national championship out of the 12 team bracket right now. So, Kramer, the floor is yours. Who do you have as your top contender and who is your sleeper?
I've got two teams, by the way, that know each other very well. And my contender is Georgia. And I had a chance to be able to write about this past week after beating Texas. Georgia is kind of the championship contender that has been there all along that we really haven't given a lot of consideration. Now, some of
Yes.
that is because Georgia, even in winning, was unimpressive at times. The one loss came in a close game to Alabama. Georgia wasn't necessarily dominant. The last two games against Mississippi State and then Texas, Paige, I love the completeness of this team. I love their quarterback. I love Kirby Smart kicking onside kicks, right? Like, I love that. And to me, it represents the attitude, obviously the experience, but I also think the talent. They've got speed on offense, but they can run the ball. I think they're really, really tough. The defense isn't as good as some of the previous Georgia defenses, but it's getting better. And I think we're seeing this team peak at the right moment. So they would be my contender. Alabama just lost a football
Now,
game.
yeah.
Alabama, deep breath. Alabama just lost a football game, right? They had double the yardage of Oklahoma last week. I think they can still play their way back into this. Now, I know the Florida State loss is a resume nightmare, but you and I are talking about who could be a sleeper and get in and still win this thing. Paige, there's
Yeah.
just too much talent on the offensive side. Ty Simpson, those wide receivers that they have, three turnovers last week doom them. I still think game to game, Alabama is a threat, but offensively, as they're close to dropping out of the top 50 in offense, that's undeniably a concern, which is why I can say unironically Alabama is a sleeper to win the title.
Now, my contender is arguably the number one team in the country, and I feel like we need to talk about it because you know what? The chat, I'm going to side with you today. All right, chat, are we ready?
Wow.
Indiana should be the number one team in the country.
I'm ready.
I feel like the conversation around Ohio State has not played anyone is extremely valid this year more than other years. And I think Indiana had to face that conversation all last year. Their strength of schedule is a lot better. They've been tested. They have battled in some games that have just been gross, for a lack of a better term, in some close games, but also been put the pressure on, and they've won in big environments and they've won big. So Indiana is top three in both scoring offense and defense. I think the new era of the 12 team playoff, this team has a real shot because they've been battle tested. And I think, sure, Ohio State is the quiet, leader of the pack this whole time. But you know what? I think if I'm giving a Big Ten team a nod, I think we should respect Indiana a little bit more. I don't know why this week of all the weeks I decided it wasn't like Ohio State did anything for me to upset me in that way. It just feels like statistically we've been kind of been ignoring it and we're really pushing the logo there. Now, for my sleeper, I mentioned this a bit earlier, but if this team is healthy, they can beat anyone in this bracket right now, and that is Dan Lanning's team at Oregon. I think they're playing without two of their best receivers the last 2 weeks. They've grinded out wins. They've played in tough weather conditions. They haven't really had a misstep since Indiana. They've, been in close games. We've seen them do 2-minute drills. Dante Moore is reliable. Of course, he needs to cut back on maybe some of those, plays when he is under pressure and be a little bit better there. But they got a shot this weekend to really prove again, back-to-back weeks, that they deserve to be in this conversation more than anyone else, or just along with everyone else in the Big Ten.
I agree with you there, by the way. It's a big week, big week for them. And by the way, whether you picked Indiana last week or this week, like, do it, right?
Yeah.
They have a case for it. They absolutely have a case for it. And a little slow start last week, and then it turned into an Indiana game.
By the way, perfect timing on the chat. You guys have impeccable comedic timing. Someone in the chat said no one has seen Ohio State play this season just because they don't care. They just know they're going to win and their strength of schedule. Fair. I mean, certainly we have watched them, but yeah, that checks out a little bit. Maybe in the chat.
If you tweet about Cupcake Week in the SEC, people will tell you about Ohio State's schedule or lack thereof.
Yes.
Trust me, I learned this week. And there is some validity to that. If you're Alabama or you're Oklahoma or a Missouri fan, pick your team here that has to go through it. I can't argue with it. It has been a grind for many of these SEC teams. It just means, whatever you say, I just am watching with my own eyes and thinking like, wow, Oklahoma and Alabama must be exhausted. And it kind of looked that way, by the way, based on what we saw on Saturday.
Yeah. The other thing in the chat that people are saying, someone said, who has Ohio State beaten? Texas? Frauds. Exactly.
Well,
exactly.
Now
we know.
Now frauds.
Maybe this week.
Officially frauds. Now we
officially frauds. We can give it. We said, hey, have we been too harsh on Texas? And then sure enough, this weekend they said, psych, you guys know.
Texas is so bad. We're back on that, right?
We're back.
Okay.
We're
Texas
back.
Bad again.
We're back on that. Sark to the NFL, guys. I'm sure. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Someone else in the chat thinks that Georgia Tech will beat Georgia. So let me just, before you speak, Kramer, because I know where you're going to go with this. I have been the biggest Georgia Tech supporter this season because I think Haynes King, man, that guy deserves all the credit in the world. But they have played in some games against some really not great opponents, and just defensively, really, they are struggling. So I don't know that their defense will be able to do anything against Georgia's offense. I'm so sorry. I want that to be the case, and I loved how exciting last year. Someone in the chat said Haynes King stands unite. Hello, fan club member, president of the fan club. And it's fun to watch him on offense, but then you watch them play on defense, and you're like, oh my gosh, oh no. So yeah, I don't necessarily think that upset's gonna happen. I'm sad.
No, I'm not gonna say they find a way to win. And last year's game was what? Like an epic. So let's not, and Georgia has played some close games too, but the defense is really bad.
But they've been
it's really bad. The Boston,
but Georgia,
it's bad. So I would be 3 weeks ago, I think you would have gotten a lot of backing on this. And now I don't know how much support that thought is going to get. However, this is college football. You never know.
It's again recency bias because, of course, this last weekend was really embarrassing for Georgia Tech, and I argued for them to be over Miami in the ACC. So
80%,
but
which feels light if I'm being honest, but fine, fair.
Yes. All right, let's look at some games this week that will impact the college football playoff. We know most of them will not be in the SEC, of course. But we will be. And someone in the chat asked if we were getting paid by the SEC, which is hilarious because you guys,
it's usually the opposite. I have been getting hammered on Twitter or X all week because I tweeted about Cupcake Week. I promise, no.
And I just said two Big Ten teams could win the national championship. You guys, I'm supporting the Big Ten narrative of sure the SEC is deep, but the gap in terms of complete teams belongs to the Big Ten. All right, let's take a peek. We've got USC, Oregon. Let's start there. Do you think that USC finally proves it and you have to maybe apologize to Lincoln Riley?
Got a lot of apologizing to do. Yeah, you bring up a good point. And no, I'm not apologizing here, though, because I like Oregon in this game. This spread is double digits. I'm a little worried about USC's defense. I know it's a lot better from where it was 2 years ago, but Iowa was carving them up for about 30 minutes of football. When Iowa is carving you up, that's not a great sign, even if that's a much better Iowa team at home. Look, USC is a good team, great quarterback, great wide receiver. This is an explosive offense. This should be an explosive game. I just think Oregon Page is a little bit better, pretty much in all areas, including quarterback.
Yeah, I would lean Oregon as well. Let's go Missouri at Oklahoma.
So it sounds like Bo Prabula is going to hopefully come back from Missouri. At least he's trying to come back for this game. And so I wonder for Oklahoma, is this a little bit of an emotional letdown spot? Right now it's at home. I think
God,
that
that would be
helps.
terrible.
This spread is about a touchdown, so it's not a huge number. Missouri's still getting a lot of respect despite, stacking up some of the losses, albeit against good teams.
Yep.
I think this is one to keep an eye on, Paige. I really do. I think Oklahoma is going to win. I think Missouri is going to push this one. They've got a great running back, and this is a bit of timing here. You get your quarterback back potentially. We'll see. Either way, I think Missouri is going to be feisty.
We've also got what tennis. We got Pitt, Georgia Tech. That could be a really interesting one in
Some
terms of ACC.
ACC explosions in that game.
I mean,
But it's
ooh.
big. I guess Pat Narduzzi wants to win this game, not last week,
Yeah,
clearly.
he didn't care. Yeah.
And then BYU Cincinnati is the other one.
Yes.
Look, BYU is like a 2.5 point favorite in this game. Cincinnati just coming off a loss. BYU was a short favorite against TCU, and they won by a billion points. Like the committee, the odds makers don't seem to be giving BYU a ton of respect. That is carrying over here. Fascinating. This is a fascinating matchup, I think, in the Big 12. And you talked about how do they get two teams into the playoff, or at least one of the ways. I think it starts with BYU winning here. But according to Vegas, this one's going to be pretty tight. Very, very interesting game to watch.
Yes. Who again was that Cincinnati lost to? Can't remember which team that was. Uh oh yeah, the Arizona Wildcats. That's right. They did lose to that
Oh,
team.
yes. We're,
We've got Tennessee, Florida.
I think this is another game. I don't know how many times Florida can get up for a game and lose close. But again, it's a really small spread, and it's a Florida team that clearly has some talent. Was game last week. I think they'll be game again. This is Tennessee. You need to have this if you're going to obviously have a puncher's chance. It has to start here. Uh, as lopsided as the records are, I think the score is going to be a lot closer than that.
All right, Kramer, any other games that you would keep an eye on? Maybe does any of the cupcake teams have a chance to pull off major upsets and spoil something for the SEC?
What Mercer is like 9-1. I don't know if we want to talk about that. It's fascinating though, right? Because we talked Notre Dame is a 35.5 point favorite this week. So that wouldn't be one of those games. Miami versus Virginia Tech. This is the kind of game that Miami unfortunately has lost in. They're about a 2.5 touchdown favorite in this game. I don't think they're going to lose there. Also, shout out to Virginia Tech for
Yes,
making a great football hire. It's just a way for me to insert this into the conversation of going and getting James Franklin. That's a tremendous hire.
you took the words out of my mouth, but yes, we are very happy for James Franklin, and I know a lot of Virginia fans are not happy about this. So enjoy the games this week, even the ones in the SEC that we've been hating on. There will be shakeup, I'm sure, in this bracket next week, but we appreciate you all hanging out with us. This has been the College Football Ranking Show presented by Modelo. We will see you all next week.